local responses to global challenges, a community-based approach to preventing violent extremism. This is the final conference of 3.5-year-long research project funded under the Horizon 2020 program, in which 14 partners all across Europe, the Western Balkans, and the Middle East, North Africa have worked together hand in hand in a very coordinated and synchronized manner in order to respond to the demands of the call, which is understanding, researching on the drivers of violent extremism in order to be able to suggest, to draw better prevention policies to different stakeholders.
When giving policy recommendations, we are encouraged to provide simple to understand, easy policy recommendations, but the situation is complicated. And we're looking for simple answers sometimes brings more harm than good, like looking at religion and finding the simple answer that a particular religion is the root cause of radicalization and violent extremism. This is not true. In fact, what we found out during Connekt is the other way around, that religious groups, that faith groups could help prevent violent extremism and radicalization.
The elephant in the room of the models of governance, I think, is really fundamental, and the multiple ways in which it encourages the problem we are seeking to identify rather than helping it. And I think this is very essential, which is closely connected to the nexus of alienation, or the triangle of anger, which we've talked about, which is the mixture of political grievances, economic deprivation, and territorial inequalities. Now, again, they don't play out in the same way in both regions, and in the Balkans, the territorial inequalities might be less pertinent than in the MENA region, but they are identifiable in both cases.
I think it is important to consider that the different uprisings, the different tensions, the political dissatisfactions that are widespread in the region, they reflect more structural demands for change, more structural demands for innovation, and for being recognized. So young people are demanding to be recognized. So either we transform these, we enable these demands to be expressed, and we take them into consideration from a policy perspective, or on the other hand, we are afraid of them, we don't recognize them, and then the result would be enabling radicalization rather than enabling inclusion.
I just wanted to mention on gender, we had gender, of course, we wanted to mainstream it throughout the reports, and we did that to a certain extent. But one of the things that became apparent is really the need of being more mindful in the methodologies we use when we talk about gender. Very often we limit gender also in our analysis, but also more broadly, you can see this to this male-female dichotomy, which is not gender. Gender is much broader than that. It also should speak to the relations of power and the spaces that men, women, and others inhabit and are allowed to inhabit. But we still saw some very important glimpses in the different national reports about how gender informs kind of the gendered spaces of radicalization and violent extremism.
We need to act in several fronts. Regarding youth, inclusion of youth, obviously youth need to have a voice, and we have our toolkits to provide safe spaces for young people. Young people feel absolutely disenfranchised, and they need to be part. Instead of becoming rebellious in extremism, let's young people become rebellious in civic engagement and recover somehow trust in the capacity of social transformation.
So my fear actually is that we tend to develop a meta-discourse about what is involving people, about what is involving youth, and we bring 2 or 3 or 4, and we'll be like, okay, now we are comfortable with our guilt of involvement or exclusion, and okay, now fine, we are dealing with this. However, this situation, what does it produces? It produces a multiplicity of spheres, and what I really wish for is, can we provincialize the center of participation? Can we think of participation as something happening in the periphery and for the periphery, and not actually forced to engage with the center? Can we look at the world beyond the eyes of the state?
The Connekt project is a perfect example of the efforts made to better understand the radicalization phenomenon and the situation really on the field in our neighboring countries, without forgetting, of course, our final goal, that is to ensure the security of our citizens.
So we have gone a long journey from researching, understanding, conceptualizing, and then creating, together with engagement of different stakeholders, particularly community representatives, people from NGOs, but also experts, academics, policymakers, we have made these three very different products. The toolkits for civil society organizations, a set of guidelines addressed to local authorities, and then a set of policy recommendations, some of them addressed to national governments, national stakeholders, and a set of recommendations which we will also share today to the European Union regarding the common and shared challenge of radicalization and violent extremism. We will try to disseminate these results so that at the end our results can be useful for those that are working on the ground. And this is what makes sense of the research, this capacity of transformation from research to action to society.